All right, there we go. All right. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so very much for joining us for this debrief on Virginia. I'm calling tonight's presentation Virginia Canary in the Coal Mine because we are going to have a lot of work to do, not only in Virginia, but basically in all of our states as we get ready for the midterms. And we are definitely now well on the way to the midterms. So what I want to walk you through first is the outreach that we did in Virginia. We had 332,342 postcards. So a huge thank you. I saw Gloria Beeler join us, and Nancy Goodband, and Carrie Wheaton, and Roxanne is here. Elsa, so many people who postcard for us. Thank you so very much for that huge effort. The early voting turnout in Virginia for an off-year election was amazing. A lot of my texters are here. My very good buddy, Josh Stanfield, and so many of you who texted for us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We sent 479,182 early voting text messages. Now, we did also have information about vote by mail. We were probably one of the only organizations making a point of telling voters, if they were going to vote by mail, that a witness signature was required. They are still curing many, many ballots, especially in Chesterfield County, where people sent in mail-in ballots that did not have witness signatures on them. I just got these numbers from Gabe today. We made 36,706 phone calls into Virginia. And I put a note on the slide. We left 15,273 voicemails. One of the things that is a little bit unusual about Center for Common Ground is we leave voicemails because we are calling voters with information about voting. We aren't selling candidates or parties. We are telling voters how, when, and where they can vote, and giving them very important details, which is very, very critical, especially to older voters and or voters who may be rural. So our total outreach for the November general was 848,230. So again, thank you to our phone bankers, to our postcarders, and to all the people who texted on behalf of Virginia. I thank you because I live in Virginia. And Ray McClendon is here. Welcome, Ray. All right, now let's deal with the aftermath. What happened? Well, here are the figures right now. We had the Glenn Young and Terry McAuliffe race for governor. Terry McAuliffe lost by roughly 80,000 votes. In our lieutenant governor race between Winston Sears and Hala Ayala. Again, it was an historic race because it was two women of color running for the lieutenant governor position, which is a statewide position. We lost by 61,000 votes. The attorney general, Jason Miyares versus Mark Herring, our incumbent Attorney General, he lost by 44, roughly 45,000 votes. We're going to look at what happened, what those numbers were. I'm going to go through my part fairly quickly. Frank is going to talk about the incredible job the Democracy Centers did. And then we are going to talk about how to avoid having this happen in any other state. Now, not only did we lose statewide, but we lost the majority in our House of Delegates. Currently, the way it stands is there are, whoops, and I have this reversed. It's 50 Republicans, 46 Democrats, 4 undecided. So that is the current state of the Virginia House. So I will correct these slides before I send them out. We lost some incredible incumbents. And I know there are people here with indivisible sister districts, Wing Left, and various other organizations who had the ability to work on behalf of candidates. So in Virginia 12, Chris Hurst; in Virginia 28, Josh Cole; Virginia 63, LaSharice Aird; Virginia 75, longtime delegate Rosalind Tyler; Virginia 83, Nancy Guy. Now, we also have 4 incumbents in a race that is too close to call. In Virginia 10, Wendy Goditis; Virginia 21, Kelly Converse Fowler. Those 2 are leading. In Virginia 85, Alex Askew; and Virginia 91, Martha Mugler. They are currently trailing. Again, it is very close. It is 51-49. Those races could shift in any direction. So we will be following them and just literally watching to see where they go. All right, now let's look at what we were able to do in terms of turnout. Turnout in Virginia was a record turnout. And normally a record turnout in an off-year race would favor the Democratic Party. This time it did not. So I want to congratulate our 4 Virginia Democracy Centers. Roanoke brought out 18.21% Black voters during early voting. Now, I've got a great story about the Roanoke Democracy Center. When I looked at the numbers on Wednesday, they were at 1,755 Black voters who had turned out. When I looked at who was an infrequent versus a super voter, 866 voters were either presidential only voters, meaning they were 1 out of 3, or they were first time voters. So those numbers are incredible. Congratulations to Roanoke, a small city in Southwest Virginia, a place where we don't get a lot of progressive organizations going down there to work. City of Richmond, 15.71% for early voting. Lynchburg, 13%, and Virginia Beach at 11%. What was really incredible was election day turnout. Again, the turnout was terrific. Unfortunately, it was not necessarily all for us. So again, Roanoke led the state with 71% turnout on election day. So how am I figuring turnout? I am looking at what is the total number of registered voters, and then how many voters actually showed up. So that's how I'm calculating turnout. It is turnout literally against the registered voter population of that city. Now, we have many democracy centers in Virginia, and a number of these mini democracy centers were rural. And the turnout in these mini democracy centers, especially during early voting, was almost not to be believed. So many of these cities and counties, people would have almost no idea where to look on a map. They're in South Side. So congratulations, Melissa, for all the work that you were able to do. We invested in a texting program to these little cities, and we immediately saw the result. So 53.68% turnout of African American voters, 39, literally 40% in Brunswick County, 24% in Danville, Halifax at, I can't read that one because the note is over it, but I know it's at least, oh, there it is, 40%, 39%. Mecklenburg, 13, bigger county, Nottoway, 36, Petersburg. Petersburg is normally one of those cities. It's 86% African American, where normally at the end of the day, we're talking about, and did Petersburg break 15, did Petersburg break 12% turnout? Well, they were at 18 to 24% for early voting, and Petersburg broke 41% for election day turnout. And again, small city, Frank's hometown, 56, 57% turnout. So we love, love, love all of the work that our democracy centers and many democracy centers did. All right, what I'm going to do now is, Frank, unmute, please. I'm going to bring up Frank Mosley, who is in charge of our Virginia democracy centers. Right?
Thank you, Andrea. And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us all. As Andrea was able to do, give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, right, of the Virginia election. I am so happy and so proud of all the work of the Democracy Center leaders and the many Democracy Center leaders, who many of them, other than Roanoke, who has been in Virginia for a little bit longer than the others, did a tremendous job of just stepping up to the plate here in October. Many of these mini democracy centers were just established to get out the vote in communities of color. And you can see that even though the election results may not have had the turnout, or the, let's say the turnout, because we broke record numbers for turnout, but not have the results that many of us were looking for. The Center for Common Ground and the leaders of these democracy centers and many democracy centers did a Herculean effort to outreach, to communicate, to engage, to use the tools that are accessible to us. We started off in Virginia knowing a lot more about the landscape than many of individuals who are outside of the state that we're looking in. I know that in the past, Virginia has been more blue and purple than red. And I think that a lot of people underestimated the need for the type of digital infrastructure that we were able to implement here in Virginia in this election cycle. I know that a lot of people look at the polls, and they may look at some of the candidates and see some familiar names and be very excited about the opportunity and the potential of Virginia staying blue. But Andrea and I knew earlier this year that Virginia would need more support than what we previously, even her, previously realized. And as we got on the ground, it was evident that we needed to add more democracy centers and many democracy centers to really try a more advanced and progressive approach. We incorporated technology in a way that hadn't been done before. You heard Andrea talking about the text banking. The outreach circle application was where a lot of that text banking was done. That is a tool that we have been using and incorporating in part of our strategy to be more mobile. The amount of individuals that we can reach through this app and this technology pales in comparison to what you can do canvassing and knocking on doors. So what we were able to do was use a number of different strategies here in Virginia. One being just involved in the community, as the Roanoke Democracy Center did so brilliantly, hosting block parties, trick or trunks, anything that would engage the community, and then utilizing the palm cards that we designed for this campaign. They were very instrumental in not just being great communication tools, but helping us and our leaders identify the issues that were really resonating with the voters in those communities. Every city in every city in Virginia has a different makeup, has their own specific needs, have their own specific issues. And what we were able to do through this process was start to collect some of that data through surveys, through community engagement, asking questions. What is it that would make you want to go out and vote? What is it that will energize you to get to the poll? And we got a lot of good feedback and we got a lot of good insight. And what we did was we stopped focusing so much on the candidates and focusing on those issues that we knew that would be, well, what voters in Virginia wanted to hear from their candidates. They wanted to be more connected to the issues. They wanted to be more connected to the candidacy, but they were missing that. And we were able to help in some small way highlight to both the candidates and to the voters that your issues mattered, that your issues were relevant, and that your issues deserved a voice. And as we have been outreaching across the state, we have saw so many issues that are the same in each city. Housing is definitely something that we see in every community there's a need for. Healthcare, we've been talking about expanding Medicare, but the healthcare need is truly great here. We've been looking at a number of issues around social, economic security, the jobs that individuals need and want and desire. The climate issue is something that is very important here. There have been a number of different cases where electric companies, Dominion has tried to lay down pipelines, which some candidates have supported. And I think that that also played a role in how some people decided to either vote or not vote. So being able to identify these issues in each of these locales and being able to then go back into these communities, talk to them about these issues as a way to start the conversation, directing them to then resources that can help assist them. Some of those resources, or many of those resources, we had on the app. And so being able to share the app was something that allowed us to also strengthen our structure, strengthen our network, but also be able to give these resources to these members of our community, these voters who needed assistance. When you think about why a person will go out and vote, the first thing they're thinking about is, one, am my basic needs being taken care of? If my basic needs aren't being addressed or taken care of, do I have the bandwidth? Do I have the capacity to go out and cast a vote? So what we want to do is make sure that we were addressing those basic needs first and foremost. connecting them with resources, ways that they can be assisted, way that they can find rent relief, where they can find access for healthcare, where they can find access for jobs, for food, even. So we were very conscious of the fact that those issues, those personal kitchen table issues, had to be addressed first. Then we started connecting them with why you are in this position, what it is that either the local elected officials that you either voted for or haven't held accountable have done to put you in this circumstance, and what you can do actively, an action item that we can give you, whether it's signing a petition, whether it's joining an organization, whether it's registering to vote, whether it's getting someone else registered to vote. These were all things, sharing a video that provided civic education. These were all things that we were able to start incorporating into our campaign. And as we began to do the work of outreach, we started to see some really, really great results, as you can see in the numbers of some of our efforts. We found some really great best practices that we're going to be able to utilize moving forward. We saw some really good results with partnering and networking with a number of the different organizations. Our Democracy Center leaders and many democracy leaders have been doing an excellent job at relational organizing. They've been connecting with grassroots organizations in their community and helping to build their own network inside of that city or inside of that locale, so that they can be more effective at phone banking, be more effective at text banking, and even participating in some of the postcarding. So one of the greatest achievements I think that we have accomplished here is putting together that network across the state, having people engaged in our efforts, supporting the movement of informing, educating, and now even looking at training individuals in communities of color to be more civically active, more civically minded. And of course, registering people to vote is something that we have been focused on, but we've also been focusing on restoring the rights of individuals, or notifying those who have not been made aware that their rights have been restored, and getting them registered to vote. We've been focusing on unregistered voters, as well as incentivizing those voters who, well, maybe aren't too excited about the ticket this year. But nevertheless, with our efforts, again, we were able to really start to put together a really great network across the state that really understood how we can start to change the narrative here in Virginia. I know that many of us are still trying to pick ourselves back up, deflated, feeling a little defeated from what has happened over the last 24 to 48 hours. Well, what I want to tell you is that we have learned a lot here in Virginia over these past 6 months or so. And what we are now recognizing is that the work that we have started must be sustained. We have to continue doing what we've been doing here in Virginia, because if we do not, things could have been, well, things are not ideal, but things could have been even worse. I hate to say that. Andrea noted that we were one of the few organizations that were doing the type of outreach in the communities and educating people, not just to go out and vote, but where to go and vote. That was something that a lot of the other parties, or excuse me, the other organizations that were doing outreach were not doing. Leaving voicemail messages with information behind for people to be able to play back. These little things that we learned that weren't being done. We can now start anew in this next election cycle. We can take what we've learned, the shortfalls that were not able to be reached because of the lack of time that we had to put these things together. Now we have a full year to get prepared, and we don't want to waste a minute. The fact that we waited as long as we did, as looking at some of the uh, Democratic candidates that waited as long as they did, we're not going to make that same mistake twice. What we want to do is start right now with outreach, advocacy, and training. We have to let people know about the importance of the primary. We have to let people know about the importance of the 45-day early voting and how to take advantage of it. We have to be more strategic in our ability to get this information in the hands of our, excuse me, grassroots partners so that they can start sharing it with their members and their, um, I wouldn't say um, partners, but anybody that is in their network. That's the better word. And being able to do that, being able to step in and provide a infrastructure and the training and education that they need. These democracy centers and mini democracy centers will be able to facilitate that. And our hope and our goal is to be able to really change the narrative by making individuals understand that the technology that we have, the information that we are able to compile from the data, the accuracy, the digital tools like the um, Outreach Circle app and the text banking tool that's also incorporated in that. These are things that every organization that is part of our network should be utilizing. And we want to help them understand the benefits of it and how to get acclimated and proficient at using it well before we get into any type of full-blown campaign. There are organizations that have already started to make commitments of doing outreach every 3 months, just to make sure that voters are informed, just to let them know that the Center for Common Ground is here, that the mini democracy centers and democracy centers are here and are providing the resources and the information that they need to be, well, uplifted, because we have seen and know that when our democracy is not working for us, we are not getting the type of quality of life that we are looking for as individuals and as communities. In order for us to change that narrative, we have to have a better understanding of how our government works. And you would be surprised how many individuals just on a basic civic level, a basic level of understanding civics, have no idea who to hold accountable. As Andrea say, we vote the butt in, then we hold the butt accountable. And if that butt doesn't do what we need it to do, we get a new butt in that seat. That's something that we have to make sure that our voters, our Virginians understand that they have the power to do that, to choose who represents them, the better candidates at the top and all the way down the ticket. They have the opportunity to make sure that their issues are heard and that there are people that represent those issues. They have the opportunity to make sure that they are part of and participating in a process that will give them a better chance, a better opportunity in improving their quality of life. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to get them out to vote. How do you change the narrative and the circumstances for me today or tomorrow in my personal life? How does that happen through voting? And as we are beginning to understand what is important to them, we can start answering those questions with not just resources, not just solutions, but plans that we can put into place that they can also follow, execute, and see results like we have been able to see with the many democracy centers and democracy centers across the state. So just in short, to say that the work that we have done has just begun. The advocacy, the training, the outreach, it must continue. The registration, the restoration drives and work that we do must continue throughout the year. We have to be prepared for this next midterm cycle. We cannot take Virginia for granted any longer. We know that there is work that has to be consistently done in this state, and there is a lot of individuals who still need to be educated. And that's going to take some time, but we're going to start now because now we understand what the needs are and how to best fulfill those needs as far as civic engagement. And believe me, this fight has just begun. I know that
Thank
I know that a lot of us are ready to get back into it, and so am I. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for supporting us. Thank you all for all the hard work you've done so far. But we're going to need to continue to do this work. I'm going to need to continue to have your support.
And thank you so very much, Frank. I've been answering a number of questions in the chat. When we look overall at what the problems were in Virginia, one of the problems was we had a candidate that was very, very convinced that he was the only one who could basically win the governor's race. And they made it about money, not about what the people of Virginia wanted and were interested in. So what we are going to want to see in other states is we do need to see candidates that people actually care about. What a number of people told us who were on the doors, who were on the phones, was that when they were doing outreach, Northern Virginia is where the environmentalists live. The Democratic candidate for governor brought pipelines to Virginia. And so there were just many mismatches with who Virginia is and a candidate that got elected in 2013. So a lot more issues had moved to the front. The whole issue of parents matter, all of that was very, very important to suburban voters because suburban voters are all about their children. And so the other side, Youngkin was able to literally create an imaginary threat to children, and literally that took independence over to the other side. Now, what are we going to do differently? We're going to do a whole lot of things differently. So, what I want to do is, Ray, are you here? Well, let me just look. Let me find him. Yeah, here he is. Ray, I'm making you a co-host. So, Ray, I'm going to let you decide how much we want to talk to people about what's going to be different in 2022. Ray, you can unmute. Ray may also not be at his computer this second in time, so I'll come back to Ray. One of the things that we're looking at is we know that we don't have the ability as a 501c3 to do any type of support for or of candidates. So we do have a C4, and we are looking at reactivating our C4 and literally changing the structure of how we do business with elections. The information part will remain exactly as it is, but we are going to need to be able to play a part in primaries. Also, we literally will begin working on 2022 in Virginia next week. We will begin developing a series of community surveys. Frank was talking about the democracy centers, where we go in, talk to people, find out what it is that is very, very important to them, and then get them looking at candidates and help them understand the importance of voting in primaries. In the Virginia primary, there are 5.6 million Virginia voters, 488,000 people decided who was going to be on the Democratic ticket in Virginia. That was a lot more than the 16,000 who decided who was going to be on the Republican ticket. But if we want to avoid having these outcomes in Virginia, we are going to have to make certain that the candidates that are on the ticket in November are candidates that are going to excite the voters in Virginia. The other thing we will be working on is we will be helping people understand what is happening in DC. We will be simplifying the American Rescue Plan, what it means to Virginia voters, especially our infrequent voters. People immediately are going to jump up and go, oh, let's register more voters. We have enough voters. We need the voters that we have to actually go out and vote. Yes, we will register more voters. Now, in states like Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, and Texas, we are really going to have to monitor voter registration. We are looking at getting brand new tools that will tell us who is about to be dumped off the voting rolls so we can catch them, get them back on the voting rolls. And normally people get dumped off the voting rolls for not voting. As we work to get people back on the voting rolls, we will also be working out why they have stopped voting so that we aren't constantly going through this. We bring them in the front door, they don't vote for 2 federal election cycles, they get dumped out the back door. So there's a lot of special things that we're going to have to do that are very, very, very basic. And we need totally different tools than what we have now. So what we're going to be using, people are in the process of building it and inventing it right now. All right, what I'm going to do is invite you to put more questions in the chat, and team, let me know if there are other questions that I missed. The other thing that we're definitely going to be doing is, well, actually, I got to wait for Ray on that one. So Ray, if you are here, oh, you know what? I made you a co-host. Go ahead and unmute. Ray may be on a call.
Hello.
There he is. Hey, there you are. There you are. I didn't want to talk out of turn about what we're working on. I'm going to let you talk about however much you choose to tell people. We've got 247 people that have joined us tonight.
Okay. Thanks so much. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I'm so excited to be a part of what great work you are doing. And when you look at these numbers, I just asked a question in the chat: what was the percentage of Black voter turnout to as a percentage of Black voter registration in Virginia? And what we've got to do is, we know we have the ability to increase enthusiasm when we focus on our voters and their concerns. As Andrea said earlier today, what are their points of pain, and how do we lift up those concerns and let them know that they can have their voices heard? So, were you saying something, Andrea?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No
I was
problem.
just really excited about something I saw in the chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So anyway, I just wanted to say that we are forming a collaboration to take all of this good relational organizing work that we have been coalescing around over the last 12 months or so in Georgia, in Virginia, and elsewhere, taking the lessons we learned in Georgia in the general election, as well as in the runoffs for the 2 Senate races. And we want to take that now and put together a Southern Crescent strategy, as some of us call it, to look at those states where there are large percentages of people of color, registered voters of color, that we can identify and really address their concerns using the tactics and techniques that you all have fine-tuned, and work that into that regional strategy to make a difference. You know, my goal is to make folks like Joe Manchin and Sinema irrelevant. How do we do that? By electing more Democratic senators to take the power away from one or two senators who are not going to conform to the agenda, which is overwhelmingly supported by progressives. So this new concept that we're putting in place now takes on two high visibility roles. One, to create the collaborations that occurred in Georgia across those states with those high percentages, and two, to raise the money that is necessary to invest in the education and information and advocacy that goes along with that on a year-round basis, and also with the extraordinary digital platform that Center for Common Ground has created to take what has been learned and developed through that platform and really help to put relational organizing on steroids across those jurisdictions for 2022 and beyond. So we have created a new C3 called Lift Every Voice for Democracy, which we have formed. We've got some amazing folks, including folks like Andrea and others who have great national reputations that are going to help us understand how to collaborate. But as important, we've created a C4 that is going to help raise money so that we can take what has been learned from Virginia and not make the same mistakes twice, as was said earlier, but use what we've learned and innovate with it using the extraordinary technology platform that has been created. So we're excited about what has been structured. We are a year away from the midterms. We are starting work now, today, to be ready for the 2022 primaries and to get started much earlier by doing this year round to take advantage of the democracy centers and similar activities in different states that we can then touch people and let them know that we are trusted messengers and get those turnout numbers much higher than they were before. I'll give you one last example. In 2020, the general election to the January runoff, we were able, most of the time in runoffs, the voter turnout drops to about 50% or 55 to 60% if you're really doing well of the voters who voted in the general will vote in the runoff. We had 95% of Black voter turnout in the runoffs. That shows the power of relational organizing. So if we can do this across various states, we can change the turnout numbers and we can win close elections. The national media narrative says that Virginia was rolled, we're reeling. All of this narrative is poppycock. What we know is it was a close race. We've got to have more democracy center, more hard work being done by a broader coalition of people. And that's what we intend to do, and we've started now.
Thanks, Ray. Thank you very, very much. I'm looking really at the questions in the chat. The low propensity voters in Virginia are predominantly the BIPOC voters. When we look at the non-BIPOC voters, the numbers are, say, very, very different. Their vote propensity is significantly higher. So again, registering new voters helps a little. There are 5.9 million registered voters in Virginia. 3.2 million of them voted in this election. So yes, we will have both a C3 and a C4. We did a very good job of turning out people of color, especially for early voting. Again, we did not and were not able to turn out everyone. And the big problem was Northern Virginia. Normally, Fairfax County would go 70% or more to the Dems. It was 65. So our Northern Virginia counties, that's the suburbs, they kind of went the other way. We will always maintain the C3s so that our faith partners can join us. All right. What I'm going to do is, if you have a question, if you click on the reactions button, that's where the raise hand button is. Go ahead and raise your hand, and I will be happy to talk to you. All right, Dr. Annette. Go ahead and unmute.
Hello, Andrea, everyone.
Hey,
I
Dr.
placed my
Annette.
question in the chat so that everybody could see it, because I'm really interested in finding out, how do us diehard voting Democrats get the Democratic elite machine's attention, which is what happened to us in this last election, so that we can get a pool of candidates like you were talking about who do excite voters and speak to the kitchen table issues, because we had the other candidates speaking about kitchen table issues, which is what we do and have always done. So how do we do that this time, as you all are strategizing on what we do next?
Well, what's going to be important is a tremendous education outreach to voters so that they understand the importance of primary. As I said, 488,000 people voted in the Democratic primary. So if more people had been aware of what a primary is, this is where we decide who's going to be on the ballot in November. The outcome might have been very different. So that's one thing. Again, we don't teach civics. So people just really don't understand how the party system works. We're going to have to do a much better job of teaching them, because if they want to win in November, we better make sure the candidate we want wins in June, which is when Virginia has primaries. And people from other states, whenever your primaries are, that's when you're going to need to make sure that your good candidates win. Mary Claire. So thanks for that question.
Hi, thanks, Angie. I was doing that. Sorry. Just quickly, if you could tell us, we know a little bit about McAuliffe. It's pretty clear of what happened. But I'm wondering if you'd say anything about trends in some of the other elections. A lot of us, call for Nancy Guy and Askew and LaCherice and some of those. Can you tell us any more about that, of what was going on in the state? And sorry for this echo. I don't know why it's happening. Thank you.
Well, Virginia, like most southern states, is predominantly rural, and it normally has some big cities thrown in that save it from itself. Virginia Beach and the city of Chesapeake went red. Normally, in most elections in the past 10 years, Virginia's cities have been blue. In this election, the city of Virginia Beach, the city of Chesapeake, and the city of Lynchburg were not blue. They were red. they behaved as our suburban communities did. Team, my system just froze again. So I'm going to need to close. Oops.
Josie, can you speak a little about what you've put in chat about the movement briefings? There's some interest in that. Well, we're waiting for.
I should be back. I've got this down to a science now. Lynn Feinerman.
Hi, Andrea. Hello, everybody. I'm a little confused. It looked to me like there were signs that I saw photographs of signs that said that Herring was part of the Democratic ticket. Did he also lose to
Yes.
he also lost?
Yes. Yes, the
what
entire statewide ticket lost. Yes.
Got it. So I just read a ridiculous op-ed from an idiot who's a senior columnist for Yahoo. No wonder. And I just was thinking, what he was saying basically was that Democrats have to stop working with the left and go into this clutch thing in the middle of the ring, you know, the triangulation thing that they've been trying to do and trying to look like corporate demos all along. And I'm wondering how you would all want to deal with that issue, and whether the fact that the lady running for lieutenant governor for the Republicans, excuse me, was Black, made a big difference in terms of how the vote went. Whether the race issue came in a sort of opposite way, in a sense, whether that was a manipulation to, you know, have a token, you know, do a token thing on race.
All right, I can answer that. That's pretty easy to unpack. Again, when the Republicans chose to do a firehouse caucus rather than a primary, it gave them a chance to choose their ticket, and they made sure that their ticket was diverse. So while Winston Sears is Black, Hala Ayala is Hispanic and Afro-Caribbean. So one of the big issues in terms of messaging was, and this is very important for people who don't live in the South to understand, Southern Hispanic voters, Southern Black religious voters are pro-life. They are not pro-choice. Hala started with some phenomenal ads, but one of the things she constantly did was she showed her opponent Winston Sears and then said she will ban abortion, and she dragged the abortion issue up constantly. Rule number one in politics: if people don't know your opponent's name, don't spend your money to tell them. So that was a major, major issue with her campaign. Yes, she still got more votes than Terry McAuliffe did, but that was a major, major problem. So we saw not as many of our Hispanic voters turn out and vote, or possibly some of them even voting the other way, as we would have hoped. So Virginia is not California. It is not California blue never was and never will be. It was a different kind of blue. And that's very important that we remember that in southern states. Yes, candidates can be very, 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 very progressive, but that is one of those really tough issues we're going to run into in the South. And candidates need to be able to navigate that and not fall into traps or trap themselves. Oh, go ahead, Josie.
Hi, sorry, my computer mic is not working, so and my dog is barking. Okay, I think it should be good. I just wanted to quickly, because I know there's a lot in the chat, uplift the Democracy Rising messaging calls. These are amazing. The group that leads these does a lot of different studies on what the most effective messaging is around voting or critical race theory, what have you. So I'm going to put the link in the chat again for these so that you all can hopefully attend, and hopefully you'll also answer some of your questions tonight. Thank you. That's all.
Oh, great. Thanks, Josie. And I think, let me go see if I can find him. Yeah, Steve Rosenfeld is here. So let me unmute you, Steve. Yep. Steve.
Oops. Well, hi. I'm in a I'm in another
Dark
location,
room.
dark room. So I don't really have much to add. I think people were extraordinarily eloquent earlier on and talking about the long-term thing here. You know, I really also wonder, and I've yet to see it. Who were these Republican voters that turned out, not just in Virginia, but in New Jersey, and what really drove them? And I know there's a lot of easy speculation about that, but I would really like to see what that's all about. I don't know that just yet. And the reason I say that is because, you know, the Democratic turnout was higher than past off-year elections, as you've said. And so the question is, you know, it's so interesting, Andrew, because when you talk, and I think this is so interesting, you know, a lot of the people that you reach, they're not affiliated with any party. But I wonder if there's a corollary on the right, because it's so interesting. You talk about the people in Northern Virginia knew too much, and then maybe people in these other areas knew too little and fell for the disinformation. And so how do you crack that? I don't know the answer to that, but that's something I'm thinking about. And anyway, I'll just leave it there. I think that what you folks have done, of course, is extraordinary, and it is a model to be replicated. I just don't think people I've been around, you know, national political circles as a reporter for a long time, and I've been around the Democratic Party for a long time. I just don't think people on the inside realize how smug and chummy and myopic their circles are. And to think that an ally of the Clintons who would defeat several candidates of color in a primary several months after Georgia would not be deflating. It doesn't make sense. But there it is. There you have it. So I'll stop there. And if you have a transcript, please save it, because there's good stuff in there for me to look at to do some stuff. Thank you very much, all of you. Bye.
Hey, thanks, Steve. And yeah, I will grab the chat and we are running the transcript. Here's another really, really, really important thing to remember about Virginia and southern states. In Virginia, we do not register by party. So when people want to reach out and they want to call, quote, Democrats, you are limiting yourself to a very small universe of people. They identify Democrats as people who pull a Democratic ballot during a primary election. Since very few people actually vote in primaries, you are missing a huge part of the population. Now, at Center for Common Ground, we specialize in turning out the Black, Indigenous, the AAPI, and to some degree, Hispanic voters, people of color. So we look at ethnicity and we never look at, is there a party? Because most of us are listed as being independents, or basically we're really nothing at all. And when you look at many southern states, you will find far more people who are unaffiliated than who are listed as being Democrats. And that is how we've lost elections in the South for years. We have insisted that we only want to talk to Democrats. And we just miss so many people who have fallen away from both parties, and they are now totally unaffiliated. So we need to make sure that our outreach really is for people. So our young people voted some. Again, they were lagging as usual, way behind our 50 plus voters, but it is constantly improving. How do we get the young people vote? They have to learn to vote in primaries to get the candidates that they want. They are more idealistic, and again, the voter who knew too much, they really understood the history of the candidate at the top and were not willing to come out and vote for him. So yeah. And yes, the transcript will be available. The young vote is the vote in the future. We will be doing more work through our C4, identifying our climate champions. I work with the climate cabinet. I was talking to them today. So we're going to be looking at identifying who those voters are. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right, let me close that so I can see the chat. Oh, all right, I've got a lot of questions. All right, you can all unmute yourself. I'm going to call on Katie Hickman. Unmute, Katie. There you are.
Oh, okay, thanks. I just put in the chat. Thank you so much, Andrea, and for everyone in the chat. This messaging, this talking to everybody necessity that I know it's just a podcast, but this whole topic about the obstacles you do not see and these ideas of fuel and friction, I really encourage anybody who wants to get at that. I think I'm just so searching for ways to connect. And I put it in the chat. So I just wanted to raise that up, but thank you so much, everybody.
Hey, thank you, Trudy. Or thank you, Katie. Trudy, unmute, please.
Okay, I kind of have two questions. One is, has anyone talked about the effect of Princess Blanding's candidacy on the race? Did it make that much of a difference, or
it
not
made
really?
no difference at all. It made
That's
no
interesting.
difference. He got 20,000 votes statewide. It made no difference. He wasn't even at 1%.
Wow, okay. And then my second question is, given the low BIPOC turnout in Northern Virginia, are there any plans to open democracy centers in Northern Virginia, or?
Not, well, we will look at putting one in Fairfax County, which is Virginia's largest county, and they do have a very large BIPOC community. It will be more of a mini democracy center. So we are talking about that. Again, when I envisioned the democracy centers, I never envisioned having any of them in Virginia. And then when Terry McAuliffe became the candidate and I knew I was going to need some in India, I still never envisioned needing any in Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
So yes, we are looking at getting at least one in Fairfax County. So yes.
Thank you.
Andrea, Three Strauss has been waiting patiently with their hand up.
All righty, go
Kamala.
ahead. I've got you. Three Stress. Unmute.
Is that it?
There you are.
There I am. I just, in answering a question a while back, I don't think it's just independent voters that voted, that broke Republican. I texted on the DNC platform every day for 4 weeks, 9 hours on Monday, 9 hours on Tuesday. We were turning out Democratic voters. I am convinced we were turning out a significant number of Democratic voters that were voting Republican. It wasn't just independents. That there were Democratic voters that voted Republican because of issues that, I mean, just in terms, I'm going from responses that I was getting.
Yep.
In terms of the issues we've discussed. I mean, one was parents' involvement in their children's education, and the other was, you know, Congress hasn't gotten anything done. But it wasn't just independents. I don't believe. So someone asked a question about that, and so I just wanted to share my perspective.
Yep. And Carolyn Fan is on this call, and I was very excited to see a very high turnout among AAPI, Asian American and Pacific Islander voters in Loudoun County, which is in Northern Virginia. And Caroline was, whoa, that's probably not a good thing because of this whole parents' education, critical race theory. They're on the other side of that issue. So again, it was a phenomenal dog whistle issue. It is a non-existent, non-real, totally made up, fictional problem, but there was no answer from the other candidate. And since there was no answer, people fled to, quote, protect their children. So yes.
Kamal had their hand up next to it.
That's where I was going next. So go ahead, Kamal.
Yes, hi. Kamal, I'm fine. How are you doing? Andrea, I'm from New York. I'm from New York. I'm with NAACP here in New York. I got a few questions. One, why didn't Justin Fairfax, why didn't he run?
Justin Fairfax went through a really serious Me Too issue. Justin Fairfax was in the primary for governor. The primary in June featured Jennifer McClellan, a Black state senator, Jennifer Carroll Foy, a Black delegate, Justin Fairfax, the sitting lieutenant governor. Terry McAuliffe was very, very vocal in pushing for Justin Fairfax to resign. So, of course, Justin Fairfax was not moved to support the candidate who made it a point of ruining his career.
Okay. There's a lot of talk of, the Democrats. I heard someone refer to a column written by someone in Yahoo or something, that the Democrats must move from the left to the middle or something like that. What the victory of Phil Murphy in New Jersey, demonstrated that it is possible for a progressive Democratic candidate to stick to his principled positions on these social issues and win. One may want to, some may argue, well, he just barely won. Fact of the matter, he won. And you know, and I think what, as Democrats, what we need to do, those of us who consider ourselves progressive, I'm not into, you know, labels and all of that, but it seems to me that the people who are frustrating President Biden's agenda aren't the quote unquote progressives. They are the moderates. Terry McAuliffe was a moderate candidate and he lost. So the argument that we should get moderates and move to the center because that's the way we'll win, that's nonsense. What the McAuliffe McAuliffe's campaign demonstrated is that moderates can't win, and the reason that they can't win is that they're milquetoast. They do not respond like you were saying, Andrea. Critical race theory is a bogus issue, and there was absolutely no response from anyone in the McAuliffe campaign to just destroy that. And you know, I think we need to, those of us who support the Build Back Better legislation and who wants to push for these social issues, dental and health care and all of that.
Yes.
We need to stick to our position. Those are the issues, I believe, that can win elections. What loses elections is this milquetoast, half-stepping, half-ass, you know, moderate nonsense. That will not win. Phil Murphy demonstrated that in New Jersey. Phil Murphy is a progressive governor, and he won in New Jersey. And I think that's what that election cycle, that's the lesson we should learn. What did Phil Murphy do to win? And forget about Terry McAuliffe. That he was a loser. In fact, you made the point. I never knew that. He was governor in 2013 or something?
2013 to 2017, yes.
And he brought what you said, oil pipelines into Northern Virginia?
He brought pipelines, yes.
Okay, so now here's the Democratic National Committee is putting up a candidate from 2013 into 2021, completely oblivious of the demographic changes that have taken place in Northern Virginia. Absolutely, these folks are totally clueless. And we have a similar situation here in New York and Long Island. I'm in Long Island. A bunch of clueless Democrats. They're lost in Long Island. The Republicans wiped them out in Long Island because they're just clueless. They have no idea. Putting up these candidates who are weak. And we have to move away from that. And I think that is the lesson I think we should take from this last election is that these half-stepping, half-ass, moderate Democrats, they're not going to win. They're not going to win. And also, as you said,
and again, that goes to my point. Candidates that excite the base, not only to vote for them, but to work for them by telling their neighbors about them. That is what wins. I agree. You and I need to talk offline. I'm going to chat you my email address. So shoot me a note. You and I need to talk.
Absolutely. I would be happy to chat with you.
Thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Sue Dorfman and then Judy.
Hi. So I'd just like to share a couple of quick stories. This isn't so much questions, but a couple of quick stories. And I think it's, I come from Massachusetts, where I have watched extremely competent, amazing Democratic candidates lose because their races were badly run. The most horrible one was with Martha Coakley losing to a Republican candidate. So we had a Republican senator for a couple of years. One of the things that impressed me about the Warnock-Ossoff campaign is that they went to every single county in Georgia in order to reach out to voters. What was really clear in this race is that there was not a whole lot of outreach around the state by the Democratic Party or the Democratic candidate. And I think that that is significant. One of the most amazing things to me was the number of signage that I saw, particularly for the Republican candidates in all the polling stations I went to in Fairfax County in Northern Virginia. I'm a photojournalist, so I was traveling around doing it. What I did not see was that same amount of signage when I went down into Richmond. And what I absolutely saw was in one particular location, which Frank was very gracious of his time to point me to polling places, is that there was one location that did not have any signage except for Princess and for election protection. And in some ways, seeing the election protection signage there kind of really almost hit me in the gut, because it was at a high school in a predominantly Black neighborhood where the polling station is extraordinarily well run by community members, had steady turnout, and that would probably be one of the least likely places that there would be a need for an election protection call. What I did encounter was at almost every polling station I went into, there were Republican poll watchers, and I didn't necessarily see Democratic poll watchers there. One of the other, so basically just very quickly, a couple of things. One thing that might make a difference is that Parents for Yoakum signs were huge, and that what might make a difference is going to the school boards and saying, we need civics taught in our school. If parents are really concerned about their kids' education, then they need to be taught about civic education. The same thing is true within the prison system. I spoke with one returning citizen who was so excited about being able to cast his ballot for the first time and felt very strongly that civic education needs to happen in the prison system, where we have lost that civic education, and that it was very popular. One thing that I saw today, I am on listservs that are on both sides of the aisle, and one was from an organization that said, we're going to go to progressive colleges and talk about critical race theory and educate the conservative students on these progressive candidates, because we can't not go to the progressive colleges. We need to get those students involved in talking about critical race theory and why it's a threat to their education. So basically, from everything that I saw in the last couple of weeks, I think that we really need to look very closely at what the messaging is that's coming from all sides. The Republicans have definitely taken some pages from the Democratic progressive playbook, and we need to pay attention. But that's then one final note. I was at the McAuliffe Vote Watch Party and talking with a former chair of the board of one of the larger northern Virginia counties. What he said was, part of the reason why parents were going towards Yoakum is they're exhausted. They were frustrated and furious that their schools were closed during COVID. And part of this, he felt, was really a backlash against the mandates and against the schools being closed. And it has very little to do with progressive politics. It has to do with COVID exhaustion, and that might be something else to take a look at. So these are just a few observations I saw while I was on the road the last couple of days.
Thanks, Sue, and thanks for coming down from DC. All right, Judy, you're going to be my last question. I can't believe how long we've been here.
Hey, Andrea, thank you for unmuting me. Yeah, no pressure then. Just really briefly, Sue just spoke about civic education, the importance of that, and I agree completely. Related to that a bit, we talked earlier about how voters complain that the Democrats can't get anything done at the federal level, and therefore they stay home because they're discouraged. And I get that. That's really frustrating. My question is, how can we get people to understand that the Republicans are blocking everything? To hear the pundits, to hear some of the conversations, you'd think the House and the Senate were both 100% Democratic instead of like almost exactly 50-50 in the Senate. How can we combat that?
Andrea is frozen.
Andrea's frozen, but I agree with you. That's an issue. I think Biden doesn't want to be finger pointing at the Republicans is part of it. He wants to be like, still the big tent guy that everybody loves and he loves everyone. But, we do have to point out that the Republicans are obstructing everything in Congress.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes. So one of the other things we're going to work on with democracy centers, in addition to the community surveys, one of the things that we will be including on our relational organizing will be the various benefits that are going to be available to regular people through the American Rescue Plan. Hopefully we will get Build Back Better this week, what we will be getting through Build Back Better, and the infrastructure, Build Back Better is infrastructure and reconciliation, because all of those should be coming up for a vote, hopefully sometime this week. So yes, we do need to spread the good news. And since the party seems unwilling to spread the good news, we're going to have to take it upon ourselves and do it.
Yeah.
So we've already got the child care tax credit and rent relief already sitting on outreach circle. All right, I'm going to take, do we have any other questions that I need to take? You will get the slide deck. Yes, CARES, the American Rescue Plan. Yes. And the counties have money. Many counties in southern states have not distributed the funds, but they did get them. So yes. Now, we're going to invite everybody to join us next week as we begin to move into a slightly different phase. We're going to be joined by Heather Booth. Heather will be talking to us about Build Back Better, budget reconciliation, what is going on in DC right now. We'll be telling you what you can do. And then we also have special guest Representative Jamie Raskin from the 8th Congressional District in Maryland. And Jamie will be talking with us about voting and some of the other important legislation that is going on in DC. And then we will begin a series of roundtables where at least once a month we will bring on a member of Congress and they will help provide us with education around legislation that they are drafting. And that will also all be part of our C4 initiative as we move back into what we used to do, a lot of support for legislation. People start learning what's being introduced, and when they don't get it, we can start explaining why. If you have no idea what we're trying to do, then it looks like we're not doing anything. So we will take on the job of educating people about what is good for them and everyone else. And I saw that, and I'm going to work on that. Anat Schenker, yes. So Rosario, yeah. So Carrie sent me information. So we have been here, folks, 90 minutes. So yes. Oh, and then there's a couple of notes here. The Progressive Caucus is now at the largest it has ever been in history. It's got almost 100 members. So it's growing and growing. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening.